Welcome back to the Theater of Dreams as a Static Oracle special. Impossible VHS will return sometime in mid-July. This episode is the first of 3 stories that presses dreams into a new and very different shape. Remember, dreams are your friends, and remember, Friendship Bureau supports this and most messages as long as they are not in the middle of the show or you are definitely going out the side door. Enjoy!
Stories from the Theater of Dreams. The Disillusionment of Spicy Friends, a story in 3 parts. Tonight's performance, The Friendship Bureau. Dream log number 002, 3:40 a.m., written and directed by Morgan Olson. Part 1, The Grand Cantata. The thing about a friendship is that you are not supposed to be able to see it. That is the whole point of it. It rides along behind you, soft and quiet, the way a shadow does, except that a shadow lies flat on the ground and a friendship sits up and breathes. Most people in the city carried theirs the way you carry a coat over your arm in spring, without thinking, without looking, certain it would still be there when the weather turned. They called them pillows because that is what they looked like, roughly, if a pillow had decided one morning to become a small animal and had gotten about 3/4 of the way to the decision before losing its nerve. You did not see the pillows. That was the agreement the world had made with itself. A man walked down Verbena Street with a healthy friendship tucked under his arm, and you saw a man walking, nothing more, and the pillow stayed politely invisible, because a healthy thing has the good manners not to draw attention to itself. It was only when something went wrong that you began to see them. A pillow gone grey. A pillow that had stopped breathing evenly. A pillow that flinched. The sicker a friendship got, the more visible it became, until at the very end, a destroyed one would lie in plain sight of the whole street, and everyone would look away. Because there is nothing more embarrassing than another person's ruin laid out where the children can see it. Which brings us, as most things in the city eventually did, to the children. On the night of the Grand Cantata, Wexley Plum was 11 years old and stationed in the upper gallery of the Civic Music Hall with a notebook, a pencil sharpened at both ends, and a feeling in her stomach that 4 years of fieldwork had taught her not to ignore. She wore the grey flannel of the Bureau's juvenile division, short trousers, a waistcoat buttoned to the throat, a tie knotted small and hard the way the senior agents knotted theirs. And she had pinned her badge inside the lapel where the audience could not see it. The badge was a tin thing, hardly bigger than a coat button, stamped with the Bureau's seal, 2 hands, not quite touching. Below the seal, in letters too small to read without leaning in, it said, Friendship Bureau, and beneath that, smaller juvenile division, and beneath that, in the smallest letters of all, the words every agent learned on their first day and carried more or less for the rest of their short careers. We notice. From the gallery she could see almost the whole hall. 800 seats below her, filling steadily, 800 adults in their good evening clothes, and tucked beside or behind or beneath nearly every one of them, a pillow. From up here, with the house lights still on, they were a field of soft, pale shapes, like a meadow of sleeping things. And they were... She checked, sweeping the rows the way she had been taught, left to right and back again. Everyone she could see, well, breathing easy, brushing themselves against their owner's sleeves the way a cat works itself against a doorframe. A good crowd, a healthy crowd. Somewhere in it was a man who had come to kill. "Gallery to floor," she murmured and touched the brass button behind her ear. The earpiece had been built for an adult and sat in her ear like an acorn in a thimble, but it worked. "Gallery to floor, do you read?" A crackle. Then the voice of old Pim, who was 13 and therefore old, came through thin and dry. "Floor reads you. Anything?" "Nothing yet. Full house. All green up here." She wet the pencil tip against her lip, a habit the senior agents kept trying to break her of. "How's the cloakroom?" Cloakrooms counted. 312 pillows, 312 healthy, no contraband, no falsifications. That was Beatrix, who worked the counter on event nights and could count a crowd faster than the machine that was supposed to do it for her. "Whoever he is, Plum, he brought his own. He's not stashing anything with me." Wexley nodded to no one. Of course he hadn't. The destroyer never carried tools. That was what made him so hard. A poisoner you caught by his poison, an arsonist by his matches, but a man whose only weapon was himself. What did you search for? What did you take from him at the door? They had a tip. That was all. A note slipped under the bureau's door 3 days ago in a hand none of them knew, which said only, "He will be at the cantata. He does it for no reason. Watch the ones who make the beautiful thing." And then, because whoever wrote it had a flair for the dramatic that Wexley privately found unprofessional, a small drawing of a pillow with a line struck through it. "Watch the ones who make the beautiful thing." They had argued about it for an hour. Beatrix thought it meant the singers. Old Pim thought the composer, who was famous and difficult and rumored to be in the audience. But Wexley, lying awake the night before with her own pillow breathing softly against the back of her knees, had thought, no. The beautiful thing is the music, and the ones who make it with their hands all night long are never once looked at, because the audience is looking at the singers, the orchestra. "Floor," she said. "I want eyes on the pit." The lights went down. There is a particular silence that falls over a concert hall in the half-second after the lights die, and before the conductor lifts his hands. And into that silence, the whole audience leans forward very slightly, 800 people and their friendships, all tilting toward the stage, like a field of grass when the wind decides which way it's going. Wexley felt her own breath go shallow. Below her the orchestra sat in its lit pit, a warm trench of black coats and white shirts, and the gold of the instruments. And at the front, the conductor raised his baton and held it, and held it. The cantata began. It began with the low strings, a sound that came up out of the floor more than the air, and then the woodwinds laid something thin and silver on top of it. And then, Wexley would remember this a long time, the whole hall's pillows responded at once, 1,000 soft shapes settling deeper, content, fed, because that was the other thing about friendships nobody said out loud. They liked music. Music was a kind of food for them. A good concert sent 800 people home with their pillows plumper than they'd come in. It was why the cantata mattered. It was why the city paid for it. It was why, Wexley thought, with a cold finger drawing itself up her spine, he had chosen it. All that food, all those pillows opened up and softened and trusting, leaning toward the stage with their guards entirely down. She found the soprano with her opera glasses. The lead, a tall woman in green named Della Marsh, whose name was on every poster in the city and whose voice, when it came in over the strings in the second movement, did something to the back of Wexley's neck that no amount of training had prepared her for. Della Marsh sang, and her own pillow, a fat, healthy thing the pale gold of butter, sat at her feet and swelled with pride. And around her the other performers stood with their pillows ranged behind them, and below them all the orchestra played on. Plum. Old Pim's voice, very quiet now. Second violins. Third chair in. She swung the glasses down. found the second violins, counted in 1, 2, 3. The third chair was a thin man, middle-aged, grey at the temples, with a face so tired and ordinary the eye simply slid off it. He played his part exactly as written. His bow went up and down with all the others. And he had no pillow at his feet, no pillow behind his chair, none anywhere on him or around him. And every other musician in the pit had one, because an adult without a friendship is like an adult without a shadow, the kind of wrongness the mind refuses at first and then cannot stop seeing. "I have him," Wexley breathed. "Third chair, second violins. No pillow, repeat, no pillow. All units, I have the destroyer." Now, there is a way these things are supposed to go, and Wexley knew it cold, because the senior agents had drilled it into her on 100 quieter nights. You do not move during the music. You wait for the break between movements, when the hall relaxes and the pillows lift their heads. And in that loosening, you move 3 agents from 3 directions and have him out a side door before he knows he's been seen, and the audience goes home having watched a concert and nothing else. Clean, invisible. "We notice," the badge said, and the unspoken second half of it was, "and no one notices us." That was the way it was supposed to go. What happened instead was that the thin man in the third chair felt her looking. She would never understand how. She was 100 feet away and behind glass and in the dark. But there is a thing the very best destroyers have, the ones who do it for no reason and have never once been caught. And it is the same thing the children of the Bureau had, turned inside out and gone rotten. They notice. He noticed her noticing. His tired, ordinary face came up off his music and turned, unerring, to the upper gallery, to the small grey shape of a girl with opera glasses, and across the whole dark width of the hall. In the middle of the third movement of the grand cantata, the destroyer and Wexley Plum looked at each other. And he smiled. Not cruelly. That was the worst of it. He smiled the way you smile at a child who has caught you at something small. An "oh, well done," you sort of smile, almost fond. Then he set down his violin very gently on his empty chair, and he stood, and he opened his mouth, and instead of singing, he made a sound. Wexley had read what little file there was, but reading is not the thing itself, and the thing itself was this. The sound he made was not loud. It was hardly a sound at all. A single note, low and flat and off. A note that belonged in no music ever written. The precise opposite of the food the orchestra had been feeding the room all night. It slid into the music the way a hair slides into your mouth, unnoticed at first and then unbearable. Most of the audience heard only a wrong note, a flubbed entrance somewhere in the strings, the kind of thing you forget by the time you reach the cloakroom. But the pillows felt it. Every pillow in the hall, all 800 of them, flinched at once. It was, Wexley thought later, like watching wind cross a wheat field, that fast, that total, that silent. A great shudder ran through the meadow of soft, pale shapes below her, and most of them rode it out. Most of them were healthy and fed and well, and they shuddered and shrank, and then slowly, trembling, sat back up, because a strong friendship can survive one wrong note, even from a man who means it. But up on the stage, where the pillows had been opened widest, where Della Marsh had been pouring her whole gold voice into the room, and her gold pillow had been swelling with all of it, wide open, utterly unguarded. "No!" Wexley shouted, on her feet now, the protocol forgotten. "Get them off the stage! Get them!" Della Marsh's pillow burst. There is no kinder word for it. It did not pop like a balloon with a sound. It came apart the way a thing comes apart that has been holding too much love too openly at exactly the wrong moment. It ceased to be a single thing and became a scatter of grey, a slow, soft falling, like the inside of a cushion let out into the wind. The famous soprano stopped singing in the middle of a note and put her hand to her chest and looked down at the floor where her friendship had been, and her face, her beautiful poster face, did something that 800 people would spend the rest of their lives trying to forget. Beside her, a stagehand dropped to his knees, clutching his own pillow, which had not burst but had folded itself nearly in half and was bleeding the slow grey of a deep wound. And at the very edge of the stage, where the children's choir had been seated for the cantata's final movement, a small girl with a half-sized violin gave a short, surprised cry and looked down at her pillow. A child's pillow, bright and new and supposed to be untouchable, supposed to be safe. That was the rule. That was the whole rule the world was built on. And saw the long, thin line that had opened across it, like a cut across the back of a hand. They caught him. Old Pym came over the pit rail like something fired from a sling and had the thin man face down across his own empty chair before the last grey flake of Della Marsh's friendship had touched the stage. Beatrix came up the center aisle with the house lights blazing and her arms spread wide, herding the panicking audience back into their seats with nothing but the flat certainty of a 13-year-old who has decided, "You will do as you're told." And Wexley came down from the gallery 3 stairs at a time, badge out now, Friendship Bureau catching the light, shouting the words that cleared a path through any crowd in the city. "Bureau, Bureau, make way for the Bureau." By the time she reached the stage, it was over and it was too late, both at once, the way it so often was. The destroyer lay calm under old Pym's knee, not struggling, his tired face turned to one side, watching the grey scatter of the soprano's pillow with an expression Wexley could not read and did not want to. When she crouched beside him, breathing hard, he rolled his eyes up to her with that same fond, awful smile. "You saw me?" he said. His voice was perfectly ordinary. "You're good, you're very good, for one so—" He stopped, considered. "How old are you?" 11. 11. He seemed to find this enormously sad, sadder than anything else that had happened that night, and for one strange second, Wexley thought he might cry. "You should have waited for the break," he said softly. "You knew that. They taught you that. You saw me and you knew the rule, and you couldn't help it. You noticed, and you had to let me know you'd noticed." He closed his eyes. "I used to be like that. A long time ago, I used to notice everything." "Why did you do it for no reason?" she asked him, because it was the question, the only question, the one the whole bureau had been asking about him for years. And the destroyer opened his eyes and looked at her with what she would always swear was genuine puzzlement and said, "For no reason," as though she had asked why water was wet. They took him out the side door after all, though there was hardly any point in being quiet now. Old Pym went with him, and Wexley was left standing on the stage of the Civic Music Hall in the terrible bright wash of the house lights among the wounded. Della Marsh sat where she had fallen, very upright, very still, in her green gown. And an adult could not be allowed to sit like that for long with nothing left. Because Wexley could already see what every trained agent in the city could see. The soprano's friendship was gone, entirely gone, not wounded, but destroyed. And that meant Della Marsh was no longer, in the eyes of the law and the world, fully a citizen. She was a person without a shadow. And there was a place for such people. There was a train, and there was a place the train went. And it was Wexley's job. The part of the job no one ever told you about when you signed your name in the Bureau's big book at the age of 7, and felt so proud. It was Wexley's job to put her on it. "Don't," said Delamarche, without looking up. Her voice, even ruined, was the most beautiful thing in the room. "Don't say it yet, just not yet. Let me sit a moment more." So Wexley let her sit a moment more. The stagehand would recover. His wound was bad, but his pillow was whole, and a whole pillow heals, given time and quiet, and somebody kind to sit with it. Beatrix was already kneeling beside him, talking low, doing the thing she was best at, which was making a frightened adult believe the world was still mostly all right. But the child. Wexley went to her last and knelt and looked at the small bright pillow with the long thin line cut across it and felt the bottom drop out of the night, because children healed. That was the rule the whole upside-down world was built on. That a child's friendship was made of something springier than an adult's, something that took a hit and bounced back in a week, which was why the children ran the bureau and walked into danger and put themselves between the city and men like the one old Pym had just dragged out the side door. "Kids are not normally affected," the manual said. Page 1, line 1. "A child makes a new friend as easily as breathing. This is the foundation of the service, and the reason it can ask of you what it asks." But the line across this child's pillow was not closing. Wexley had cut her own pillow once, on a job, a glancing thing, and watched it knit shut over an afternoon like a scratch on her arm. She knew what a healing child's wound looked like. This was not that. This wound sat open and still and wrong, and the longer she looked, the colder she got, because there was only one way she knew of to hurt a child's friendship so it did not bounce back. And that way was supposed to be impossible. That way was supposed to be a story the senior agents told the little ones to scare them into following protocol. "What's your name?" Wexley asked the girl gently. "Cordelia," the girl whispered. "Is it going to be all right? It hurts. It's never hurt before." Wexley looked at the cut that should not exist, on a pillow that should not be hurtable, made by a man who did it for no reason at the exact concert where a soprano's whole friendship had been scattered to the wind. And she had the sudden, vertiginous feeling, standing in the bright lights among the wounded, that the man old Pym had dragged out the side door had not been the answer at all. He had been the question. "Yes," she told Cordelia, and made her voice the way Beatrix made hers, certain and warm and only mostly a lie. "Yes, it's going to be all right. I'm going to make sure of it." Behind her, very quietly in her green gown, the most famous voice in the city said into the empty air, to no one, to the grey scatter on the floor that had been her oldest friend, "All right, I'm ready now. Take me to the train." And that is where it begins.
And that was Theater of Dreams. Next Sunday, we will have the next episode of this tale of spicy friends to possibly haunt you. And give your buddy a call that maybe there is something about neglecting your friends as an adult you might have missed until this story reminded you.